Diversity simply is a fact. It's a fact of life. It's a reality in our society. We're a country where almost half of the population was either born overseas or has a parent who was born overseas. But the real meaning of diversity really lies in how we should respond to it. For many people, it's a threat, a challenge, something to overcome. But we can also see it as an opportunity to fulfill our potential as a society, to get the most out of all of the members of our community. But you can only get there when you have a certain confidence in your own sense of identity, when there is common ground. And that goes to the heart of negotiating diversity today, to ensure that you value difference, but from a position of common ground. For many people, diversity is just something they grew up with, and there's a very natural sensibility around dealing with differences of opinion, differences in culture, differences in background. But for those who haven't been accustomed to diversity, it can be a challenge, it can be threatening, particularly when you're dealing with economic and social change, with insecurity, a loss of identity, and it's in those sections of our community where more work needs to be done in dealing with the kinds of profound social and cultural change that we're seeing today. But there's never been a more exciting time to be dealing with these things. Australia is at a unique juncture. Here we are as a country on the cusp of an Asian century, well placed to give insight into the opportunities of the age. It has, to some extent, because it means that you can access different cultures and different parts of the world at your fingertips. You can now get on your mobile phone, log into Facebook or Twitter, and you can be following events in America or in London or in China or in Japan as though you were right there yourself. What it also means, though, is that there can be a challenge in breaking down barriers too, particularly if we're not communicating with those who have differences in opinion or who have different points of view. We know that social media and technology can be a double-edged sword. It can both open up people's minds, but it can also close people's minds as well. It can be a force for good, but it can also be a force for nastier elements in our nature as well. Well, a global citizen is simply a curious citizen, someone who's willing to learn, to be open to new experiences, and who understands that the position you're in can never definitively give you all of the answers at any given time. That for me is what global citizenship is about. It's about being able to deal with change, to have curiosity, being prepared to ask questions and to reflect on where you've come from and where you're going. So global citizenship might be as much a sensibility as it is a status. Any citizenship needs to be grounded in a sense of identity and in a sense of belonging. An education system in Australia should give those coming through it an anchor, ways to understand the world, to have a reference point for understanding the changes around us. I think what that involves practically is giving people a sense of Australian history, but also opening them up to different perspectives, different traditions. A big part of that in the future must surely be about language, opening up Australian students to different languages. We're a multicultural society, but we don't seem to have that multiculturalism yet reflected in multilingualism in Australia. Certainly when compared to Europe, where it's customary for citizens to grow up and speak 2, 3 or 4 different languages, and mastering a different language does give you a different way of looking at the world. It does open up windows into different ways of being. Nothing surprises me really. I'm never surprised to see incidents of racial hatred simply because it remains an unfortunate fact of our society. Yes, we have come a long way as a country, but there remains a great deal of prejudice and discrimination that we have to be mindful of. And complacency here is very dangerous ground, and I suppose it's part of my job never to be surprised by the ugliness that does emerge from time to time. But I'm cautiously optimistic about things, and I have confidence that we will be seeing progress and that we are making progress as a society on racial matters. It happens for many reasons. It can be born of hatred, it can be born of belief, it can also be the product of ignorance or fear. It can also be the result of arrogance as well. We see all of human frailty coming through when we look at issues of race and racial discrimination. But one pitfall we do make is to think that racism is the province of only countries that have systems structured on racial lines, to think that something isn't truly racist unless you believe in racial superiority or unless it involves violence or segregation. Racism can be insidious, and often that's the hardest form of racism to fight. It can be casual, it can be expressed through expectations, through stereotypes, through attitudes, and that really reveals the true challenge of combating racial discrimination today. Absolutely, it doesn't have to be direct, it can be indirect. It doesn't always need to be revealed, it can be hidden. And that makes it all the more important for us to call things out when we see them, to be prepared to speak out on behalf of others, and to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Empathy is key to fighting racial discrimination, because quite often one reason why we do still struggle with it is that people don't pause to think about the consequences of their words or their conduct.